Well, time is very much running out for a death row inmate to avoid execution tonight. A Georgia parole board is now considering a final appeal for clemency from Kelly Gissander, who conspired to have her husband murdered back in 1997. If she is put to death at 7 p.m. tonight, she would become the first woman executed in Georgia in 70 years. Joining us now to talk about the merits of her case, Lise Wheel, Fox News legal analyst, and Brian Claypool, a criminal defense attorney. So she had a boyfriend at the time, Lise. She let him in the house. She went out to party while the boyfriend stabbed her husband and the father of her 3 children to death.
Right.
He copped a plea, got 25 years to life, but she was sentenced to death. And now she is on death row tonight, although it has been delayed a couple of times. Go ahead.
This woman is evil, and you set out the facts exactly right. She had this boyfriend. She set up the boyfriend to go in there and bludgeon the father of her children to death while she took off with friends and partied. The only reason she got the death penalty is because she did go on trial, put a jury through that, and the jury said this woman should be executed. No, we haven't executed someone in this state for many, many years, but this woman should be the one that should be executed. So I think that if we're going to have a death penalty, this one qualifies for it. But the issue here, though, as you said, John, juries and states very, very rarely execute women. It's kind of a sort of a reverse stereotype, a reverse discrimination, if you would.
Brian, you've been on here before. You've stated your opposition to the death penalty. In this situation, one of the arguments that her lawyers are making is that, look, the guy who actually killed her husband is going to live out the rest of his life in prison, or perhaps get out after 25 years. She wasn't even in the room at the time, and she gets the death penalty. But as Lise pointed out, she had the opportunity to make a plea deal, and she went for a jury trial. So why should that make a difference?
Well, I'll tell you why, John, and this is going to be a major black eye in our justice system if this woman is executed tonight. There's a couple reasons why. First of all, let's talk about what you just said. She had ineffective legal counsel during that first trial. Her lawyer told her to not enter into that plea bargain, and John, that's one of the mitigating factors that this parole board should take into consideration. Typically, death row suspects or inmates, they get bad legal representation. We need to fix that. The second issue is the parole board needs to consider her rehabilitation. She has been a mentor in jail to other inmates. She's found God. She's mentoring other women. She's doing well in jail. That should also be considered. And the law, John, is not being applied uniformly throughout the country. How is it that somebody like Jodi Arias, who stabs her boyfriend 35 times, doesn't get the death penalty? Here's a woman who didn't even carry out the act, and she's going to die tonight? We've got to stop this.
That's because lawyers like you, defense lawyers like you, don't like sentencing guidelines. That's why it's not uniform across the state and across the federal country. That's why, because defense lawyers don't like sentencing guidelines. And by the way, ineffective assistance of counsel, if that really was an issue, would have been won on appeal, and she would have won on appeal if she'd been able to prove that.
I want to, Brian, hang on a second. I want to play, or actually read, a statement from her daughter. Her daughter was 7 years old at the time of this murder. Daughter didn't speak to the mother for years when she found out that her mother had been involved in the father's murder, but she's come around. She says, "My dad would not want my mom to be executed. Even knowing her role in his murder, he would not want us to endure another devastating loss." So that's one thing that the parole board has to deal with. But then on the other hand, the parents and siblings of the dead man issued this statement. They write, "As the murderer, she's been given more rights and opportunity over the last 18 years than she ever afforded to Doug, who again is the victim here. She had no mercy, gave him no rights, no choices, nor the opportunity to live his life. His life was not hers to take." So, Lise, how does the parole board balance those two statements from close relatives?
Well, they're going to weigh them both, and I guess the one from the daughter really is a mitigating circumstance. And at the end, I don't think she'll be executed, because I think Georgia will say, look, we haven't executed a woman all these many years, and since we reenacted the death penalty in 1976, we've never executed someone that didn't actually do the killing themselves. So I think she will get mercy from this parole board, but really this woman is evil, evil, evil.
Let's turn quickly, Brian. I'm sorry to